Okay. You're live?
We're live?
Yep.
All right. We're going to seek some truth today. No? Yeah? Maybe? We'll figure it out. We don't have a catchphrase yet. All right, we'll work on it.
Yeah.
We'll work on it.
That's a hard
I tried.
pass. That's a hard pass. Yeah.
All right. I tried. Okay, we'll work on it as every Sunday goes by. All right, guys. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Those of you who have subscribed, thank you so much for supporting. Those who are on Patreon, thank you so much for being a Patreon subscriber and subscribing to the MBE Mindset. So I don't know if you guys know, I don't really talk about it enough, so I guess I'll clue you in really quick. So MBE is just a wellness page and a wellness mentality that Laz and I are cultivating, and we are building a community of people that think like the MBE mentality. So the MBE mentality is just learning to care about the mind and body as one versus seeing it as two separate things. And we believe that in order for you to connect the mind and body and to elevate your life, you have to meditate, you have to stretch, you have to hydrate, you have to focus on how much you're eating and what you're eating. And of course, exercising on a daily and weekly basis. So it's just wellness habits that we all know we should do, but we don't actually apply them. So the MBE mentality is pretty much just encouraging people to start applying these habits into their lives in order for their life to elevate. So if you guys subscribe to that idea, subscribe to MBE on Patreon. And those of you who have not subscribed to Married Truth Talks, give it a really quick click. Takes nothing, it's painless, and it's gonna help us long term. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have an Instagram or a TikTok, follow me on Instagram and TikTok, Mary_Truths. That's Mary_Truths with an S. All right, let's get to it. All right, so last live, if you didn't see it, go check it out. Last live, I ended with Sarah McBride. So this live, I'm gonna begin with Sarah McBride. So if you guys don't know, Sarah McBride is the dude. So we're going to start with that. So Sarah McBride normalizing trans ideology on children. Fun there. Bernie Sanders and AOC leadership. Department of Education dismantled. Finally. Are checks and balances under attack? I think so, but we'll talk about it. Elon Musk visits the Pentagon. There was a huge story that broke out about that. And the final one, Trump ends legal status of 530,000 migrants. That one's interesting. So let's start with Sarah McBride, normalizing trans ideology on children. So this video actually happened like 2 months ago, or at least that's when they published it, was 2 months ago. But it's, going everywhere on the internet now since, remember, the whole Mr. McBride and then whatever, that whole shebang. If you don't know, go check out my last live. But let's take a look at this. This is
I have a girl brain,
disturbing.
but a boy body. This is called transgender. I was born this way. Mom and Dad took me to meet a new doctor who asked me lots and lots of questions. Afterward, the doctor spoke to my parents and I heard the word transgender for the very first time. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Is that okay? So, I'm like Jazz. When I was born, the doctors and my parents, they all thought that I was a boy. But why? Well, because society, people around them told them that was the case.
Oh God.
But it took me getting a little bit older to be able to say that in my heart and in my mind, I knew I was really a girl. And I was very lucky, like Jazz, to have parents who love me and say that I can be whoever I want to be. So I was finally able to be myself.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So
you see, like that right there. Listen, I don't have anything against gay people, trans people. Like, if you want to do that to yourself, by all means, go ahead, do that thing. But when you bring the kids into it, that's when I have a problem.
Yeah. So my biggest issue with this is how we've allowed it to go this far
Right.
that we are allowing, first of all, mentally ill people in Congress. This is a mentally ill person. Let's be real here. Like just a couple, like how long ago was it that the DSM? Okay, so you know how like psychology books, like they have like new editions, and it's always been in the books that body dysmorphia is a mental disorder. And he literally just admitted that he had this disorder, and his parents apparently reinforced it by, pretty much normalizing that he is a she when he was born male.
Yeah, his parents loved him enough.
Right. Like pretty much
to
insinuating.
recognize. Yeah.
Yeah, like insinuating, oh, my parents wouldn't have loved me if they would have not allowed me to believe that I am
And
the
your
opposite
parents
sex.
don't love you if they don't acknowledge that you're the opposite sex.
Right.
Like,
So like you're pretty much, so your parents reinforce your delusions is what he just said. And then on top of that, we've allowed it to go as far that we put this person in a role of power, because to be a congressman or woman, that's still a powerful role. I mean, you have the power of the purse, according to the Constitution. So this is really problematic. Like the fact that we even allowed this person to be in Congress is already a threat to, I believe, our Constitution. I believe our values, what we actually believe in as a country. The majority of the country is not comfortable with this. The majority of the country voted for Trump because they don't want this. They don't want men and women's sports. They don't want men and women's bathrooms. Like, they don't want fucking gender affirming care. They don't want this. So the fact that we have this person in a powerful seat who is reading to children and saying, yeah, it's okay for you to think that you are the opposite sex, is not okay. It's just not okay. And we need to vote this person out.
Think about that for a second. He was literally telling them, if your parents don't acknowledge this delusion,
they don't love you.
They don't love you.
Yeah. That's massive manipulation right there.
Indoctrination. And kids are highly impressionable.
Yeah.
Especially at that young age. They look like they're pretty young. Like what, maybe third grade, somewhere around there? That's insane, dude.
So this is
How did you know? Oh, they thought I was a boy. And the kid was like, why? Oh, because society. No, bro, because you have a penis between your legs.
Exactly, because you were born.
Because it's black and white.
Exactly. You were born with a penis and testicles. That's what makes you a boy, and then makes you a man.
Now they don't feel like a boy. That's another thing.
That's where the mental disorder comes in.
Exactly. That's a whole
because you
other
can
field.
be like, dude, you can like. There's a plethora of gay men out there who are very feminine and still love the fact that they have dick and balls between their legs. So this is where there's like this weird gray area where now like we have people like this who are normalizing it, and it's like, and then it makes the whole feminine man of like the gay man, which some gay men are not feminine, some are, it kind of puts him in a weird awkward place, because of people like this. So I don't know, this is wrong. We need to really rethink how liberal do we really want to be in this society? And do we really want people like this in power, pretty much telling children, yeah, you can be a boy even though you were born a girl, or vice versa. So tell me what you think in the comments. I know this is extremely controversial, but it's something that we need to talk about because it's a touchy subject and I think it's gone too far. So other things that have gone too far is Bernie Sanders and AOC going on this weird oligarchy campaign. So I've always said that Bernie Sanders is a loser and he's full of shit and he's not really a leader because, I mean, you were kicked out of the Democrat Party twice and you're still like fighting for them. Like, how weak can you be of a leader? I mean, to me, he isn't, but whatever. To the Democrats, he is. So check this guy out. Literally, getting an interview by ABC, and after being questioned about AOC being a senator, he like leaves, and then he comes back and they cut that part off. Check it out.
I helped form the Progressive Caucus. We had 5 people at that time. Now they got close to 100. So you got a whole lot of good people. Alexandria is extraordinary. I am so impressed by her work in Congress and she inspires young people all over the country.
Would you like to see her join in the Senate?
Right now we have, as I said, just a whole lot of people in the Congress.
Why did he deflect?
Thanks.
Wait, I got one more. This is important.
No, I asked you.
Okay.
You want to do nonsense, do nonsense.
What's nonsense about it?
I don't want to talk about inside the Beltway stuff. I got 32,000 people.
I was just asking you about AOC because she was out there with you.
Fine, but I don't want to talk about this.
And then he leaves. All right. So in that, I don't know why New York Post is ridiculous. All right. So he like stands up. They're still talking about it, and then the anchor somehow persuades him to come back down, and then he has like another maybe less than 15-second response, and then he leaves indefinitely. And it's like, why did you deflect? That's an honest question. Like, is AOC, the new face of the Democrat Party? Can she be part of the Senate? Why are you, I don't know, ignoring the question? It was a fair question to ask because she's talking all this smack now, trying to be a leader, trying to be Kamala Harris 2.0. So I would assume, considering he's the face of the progressive movement, he would, say, yeah, AOC would be a great leader for the Democrat Party, or AOC will be a great part of the progressive movement in the Senate. If this guy was really a leader, he would have been like, yeah, this is our girl, and he didn't. Instead, he just deflected and ran away like a little coward that he is. Listen, Bernie Sanders is genuine. I believe what he thinks is genuine. But I think that the people that believe in Bernie Sanders either A, haven't gone through enough in life to have a little bit of critical thinking, and B, like, have never worked in their life. Either or, very naive, very gullible, and everything Bernie Sanders says sounds pretty to you. Just like how the Cubans, when Fidel Castro was saying all the socialist shit, the Cuban workers were like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And then they got screwed over, all right? Because everything that sounds really pretty in practice, it doesn't work. It's not pragmatic. And Bernie Sanders is not a pragmatic person. He's an ideologue. And we already know that ideologues are in La La Land most of the time. And they're not in reality whatsoever. And another person who's not in reality is AOC. So let's listen to this chick. This is when they were doing the whole oligarchy campaign. I think that's in Colorado, right? Yeah, it's in Colorado.
Let's talk about Medicaid and Medicare for a second. Because your representative, Gabe Evans, that guy that hasn't been showing up for the last couple months? Maybe he hasn't been showing up because he voted to cut Medicaid. In fact, every single House Republican voted to cut Medicaid. And they'll tell you, no, I didn't, it didn't say that. But here's what it is. They voted on a budget that cuts $880 billion from the committee that's in charge of Medicaid. And so now they're trying to play a game and say, we didn't do that because they did by proxy, okay? So let's set the record straight. And you see, these budgets aren't just fights about numbers. They are fights over the values that define us as Americans. Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security were built on promises that we have made to each other about who and what kind of country we want to be and what kind of society we want to live in.
What does it have to do with what we want to be as a country?
Healthcare and Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, these are not promises from politicians to people. They are not charities or handouts from billionaires to the working class. This is our money. They are promises that we have made to each other as Americans. From neighbor to neighbor, teacher to student, friend to friend.
Oh, God.
And
Can you
what we
imagine
can
shit as a
say to
president?
Elon Musk is get out of our healthcare.
Healthcare. Can we send her to Puerto Rico
She's still vicious.
indefinitely? Jesus Christ. All right. So first of all, AOC, America was not founded on socialism. So like, I don't know where she's getting this ideologue that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, is what we stand for as a country. That's not what we stand for. We stand for freedom. Okay? Pursuit of happiness. Independence. That's what we stand for here. We don't stand for all that. That's just programs that we implemented because of the Great Depression.
Yeah, she's not a patriot.
Like, she's not. She's a socialist.
America!
Like, first of all, okay, the fact that people really believe that Social Security was even a good idea long term is kind of like, it's mind-fucking to me. Because Social Security, if you think about it, if you look into it just a little bit, it doesn't work. It's outdated. The way it was set up without thinking that the workforce was going to evolve. It didn't think that, oh, maybe eventually the younger generations are going to work less. Maybe the older generations will live longer. Maybe the younger generations will start working later. It didn't think about any of those factors when it was implemented, and Congress didn't fathom maybe we should, reform this because things are changing. Especially when technology just drastically started changing in a very short amount of time. It should have dawned on you, Congress, to have done something about it. But now I think it's a little too late. And that's why there's being drastic cuts to these programs. Because there's a lot of fraud in Social Security. There's a lot of fraud in Medicaid. There's a lot of fraud in Medicare. That's one. And there was fraud before Trump exposed how much fraud there really was. Okay? There was already fraud. Just nobody really talked about it. And now they're forcing you to talk about it. They're forcing you to actually question, will I even have Social Security by the time I get to 75? No, you won't. Because first of all, back in the days, we weren't going to college like we are today. When this started, 6 decades ago, people weren't going to college at the rate that we're going to college now. Which means that the young adult starts working, when is it that you graduate with a bachelor's? At 21, 22, 23, give or take? That's a lot. If you really think about it, you could start working at the age of 15. And people are starting to work at the age of 21, 22. That's already a problem. Because you're incentivizing people to focus on going to school instead of telling them, hey, you need to start getting a job and working and knowing what it is to pay bills and just, be independent. That's one. Two, older people are living longer. That wasn't the case 6 decades ago. So because technology is a thing, medicine's becoming better, they're living longer. So what's happening? Because Social Security, the amount of people that get, the amount of Social Security people get is not enough to sustain themselves. The older generation is not even retiring because they can't, because it doesn't give them enough funds. So this idea that they're claiming that Social Security is something that should not be touched. It is like this sacred thing that it definitely should be touched. It needs to be completely reformed. And we need to really think about whether that should even be a thing for our generation. Because let's be real. You really think Gen Z is going to be able to pay for millennial retirement? I don't fucking think so. Gen Z is having a hard time acknowledging that they actually have to work. Gen Zs want to all be multi-millionaires, and they want to make money off of streaming and whatever, You know, they don't have the same perspective, the same mentality as a Gen X, for example. You know, so I personally think that Social Security needs to be gutted, and that people like millennials and Gen Zs and everybody after us needs to really think about our retirement, because we cannot assume Social Security is going to be the retirement for us, because it's not even the retirement for people that are retiring, because they can't afford to retire with the money that Social Security is giving them. So that should be a wake-up call for us to actually think about our future, because Social Security, exactly right what Elon Musk said, is a Ponzi scheme. And we're going to define what Ponzi scheme is. Shout out to Jose. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think about this. I know it's a very radical idea, but I think he's on point on this. And he's not the only one who's been saying this, but he said it the best. Check it out. Yeah, this is on Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
Right, explain that.
Oh, so people pay into Social Security, and the money goes out of Social Security immediately. But the obligation for Social Security is your entire retirement career. So you're paying you're paying like if you look at the future obligations of Social Security, it far exceeds the tax revenue. Far. Have you ever looked at the debt clock?
Yes.
Okay, there's our present day debt, but then there's our future obligations. So when you look at the future obligations of Social Security, the actual national debt is like double what people think it is because of the future obligations. Like Social Security.
So really quick, I want you to go, like if you ChatGPT it or Google it, whatever, the definition of a Ponzi scheme, because this is what it is. Like the way Social Security operates is like a Ponzi scheme. And we don't really, we've never seen it this way because we've been taught to believe that Social Security is important and that we need to work, that way we can get it when we're older. But we don't really analyze how Social Security actually operates. All right, what is it? What's the definition?
A definition for Ponzi scheme is a type of fraud where money from new investors is used to pay returns to earlier investors rather than generating profits. It relies on constantly bringing in new investors to keep the scheme going, and eventually collapses when there are not enough new investors to pay returns.
Exactly. That's what's happening right now. We have the new investors, which are the newer generation, working, and the Social Security that's getting deducted out of their paycheck is going into the older investors, which is the older generation that's actually retiring. So this idea that they fed to us.
No, I'm just gonna say it's literally like the mother of like Ponzi schemes.
Yeah, it is. And it's a
just,
legal one.
People
at that.
think that they have to do it. Like it's like a thing that's in place.
Right.
Because when you have these companies that do it and they scam people, people have the option to not, fall into it. But this is something like we all kind of have to do, or we've been programmed to believe that we have to do.
Right.
Damn.
Exactly.
It's actually kind of genius. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it is. It's
Jesus.
You know who started Social Security? FDR. My favorite president of all time. You guys know how much I love talking about FDR because he really fucked up this country. And maybe his intentions were good. I'm not going to say that his intentions were not good because we went through a Great Depression. I completely comprehend the reason behind creating the social net of Social Security. However, it was a solution for the problem at hand, but it was a, what is it that they do? It was like a short-term problem, but long-term, it's creating a bigger problem.
You mean a short-term solution to a long-term problem?
Yeah, thank you. I'm like, I knew I had that mixed up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I genuinely think that we need to really think, like millennials. I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking to Gen X. I'm speaking to Gen Z. You have to think about your future. You cannot rely on the government to pay for your retirement. That is not their job. That's why I disagree with AOC and the Democrats on this. That is not the job of the government or the new generation to pay for your future. That is your job as a citizen, as an adult, to figure out what your plan is for the future and execute. That's literally it. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow because, again, we've been fed this lie about Social Security. But the reality is we cannot rely on Social Security. We have to rely on ourselves. And it's time for us to think about our future because Social Security ain't it. All right, so no taxation without representation. Yeah, bro, exactly. But we haven't been represented for a long time. Long time. Well, we're being represented now that we're even having this conversation about Social Security. And thanks to the billionaires, look at that. Thanks to the billionaires, we're having this conversation. If it wasn't for them, Bernie, we would still be getting lied to about Social Security. So the Department of Education gets dismantled. I'm very happy about this. A lot of people are scared about this because, again, it's a radical change that needed to happen. And when it comes to drastic changes, for some reason, humans have a hard time adapting, but eventually we'll come to realize that it was a good move on the Trump administration's end. So let's take a look at this really quick.
Hold on, man.
Sorry, I thought you were on it.
No.
After 45 years, the United States spends more money on education by far than any other country, and spends likewise by far more money per pupil than any country, and it's not even close. But yet we rank near the bottom of the list in terms of success. It's an amazing stat. Those are two stats you don't want. The most money spent per pupil, and you're at the bottom of the list. And that's where we are, like it or not. And we've been there for a long time. 70% of 8th graders are not proficient in either reading or in math. 70%.
That's terrible.
40% of 4th
Wow.
graders lack even basic reading skills, can't read. Students in our public elementary and middle schools score worse in reading today than when the department opened by a lot. In Baltimore, 40% of the high schools have 0 students who can do basic mathematics. Not even the very simplest of mathematics. I said, give me your definition of basic, and they're talking about like adding a few numbers together. Despite these breathtaking failures, the department's discretionary budget has exploded by 600% in a very short period of time, and employs bureaucrats in buildings all over Washington, D.C. And as a former real estate person, I will tell you, I ride through the streets of Washington and it says Department of Education, Department of Education. I said, how do you fill those buildings? It's crazy what's happened over the years. I'm pleased to report that after offering these federal employees 2 generous buyout options, and they were very generous, and they're good people, but they were very generous. My administration has initiated a reduction in force, and we're already cutting numbers that were really surprising to a lot that we were able to do it so successfully. And we've cut the number of bureaucrats in half. 50% have taken office, which is great.
Any more cutting.
Under the action I'm taking today, a small handful of Democrats and others that we have employed for a long time, and there are some Republicans, but not too many, I have to be honest with you. But the department's useful functions, and such as, and they're in charge of them, Pell Grants, Title I funding, resources for children with disabilities and special needs will be preserved, fully preserved. They're all going to be so. If you look at the Pell Grants, it's supposed to be a very good program. Title I funding and resources for children with special disabilities and special needs, they're going to be preserved in full and redistributed to various other agencies and departments that will take very good care of them. And that's very important to Linda, I know, and it's very important to all of us. But beyond these core necessities, my administration will take all lawful steps to shut down the department. We're going to shut it down, and shut it down as quickly as possible. It's doing us no good. We want to return our students to the states where just some of the governors here are so happy about this. They want education to come back to them, to come back to the states, and they're going to do a phenomenal job. You know, if you look, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, I have to tell you, I give them a lot of credit. China's top 10. And so we can't now say
bro,
that
they barely
bigness
get time
is
off.
making it impossible to educate, because China's very big. But you have countries that do a very good job in education. And I really believe, like some of the governors here today, from states that run very, very well, including a big state like Texas, but states that run very well are going to have education that will be as good as Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and those top, Finland, those top countries that do so well with education.
God
I think
willing.
they'll do every bit as well. And what do you think about that, Governor? Do you agree? Huh? I think so. Ron, do you agree? I think so. Florida? Iowa? That's right. I really believe that. They'll be as good as any of them. And then you'll have some laggards, and we'll work with them. And we can all tell you who the laggards will be right now, probably, but let's not get into that. But we'll work with them, and we're going to make them, they'll do a job. I think they'll do a job, and they'll go to sections of the state. For instance, New York, you'll have a Manhattan, and you'll have a Suffolk County, and you'll have a Nassau County, and you'll have Westchester County. You'll do 4 or 5 or 6 of them. You have upstate New York, and those counties, I think, are going to do very well. And I think ultimately Manhattan should do very well. But we'll break it down into sections, and I think it'll be really, really good. And they're going to be probably the tougher ones, but I think they have a chance to do really well.
Yeah, with the governor
But
they
we're
have
going
there,
to
of
be
course.
returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs. And this is a very popular thing to do, but much more importantly, it's a common sense thing to do, and it's going to work. Absolutely, it's going to work. And I can tell you from dealing with the governors and others in the state, they want it so badly. They want to take their children back and really teach their children individually. Probably the cost will be half, and the education will be maybe many, many times better. So we look forward to this. I want to just make one little personal statement. Teachers, to me, are among the most important people in this country.
Yep.
And we're going to take care of our teachers. And I don't care if they're in the union or not in the union. That doesn't matter. But we're going to take care of our teachers. And I believe the states will take actually better care of them than they are taken care of right now. They'll work all sorts of systems and even merit systems. Those great teachers are going to be maybe a little bit better rewarded, or maybe
All right,
that's
we're
the
good.
way it should be. But the states are going to make that.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys know, but the person who started this whole, like, shut it down, it was Vivek Ramaswamy. He's the one who started the whole shut down the bureaucracy, shut down the Department of Education. He didn't really touch much on Social Security because that's a more techie problem, and that's why he didn't really touch that. That's why Elon Musk is the one who's touching that right now. But he's the one who really pushed this idea forward, and obviously Trump is smart and he just ran on it. So this is the part, a lot of people are saying that if you bring it back to the states, that the places that they have, like rural areas that might be affected because they don't have as many people and they don't have as many schools. But I'm thinking, well, I mean, if you're going to bring it back to the states, and I'm assuming, this is all speculation, I don't know, I'm just thoughts here. I'm assuming, you tell me what you think, I'm assuming that they're going to give the money to the states, and depending on the population of the areas, if there's no need to create a public school, they'll probably create a charter school, which tend to be smaller for less children. That would make more sense than creating a public. Usually public schools are way bigger, and they don't have the whole K through 8. K through 8 is more of a charter school thing. There's very few public schools, at least here in Florida, that are K through 8. So I think that this long term is going to be better. I genuinely believe that it should have always been to the states. It doesn't make sense for there to be a federal department controlling something that should be locally. So personally, I think that this is going to prove that a lot of ideas that the Democrat Party's presidents created was, again, good in the moment, bad long term. Jimmy Carter did the whole Department of Education because a lot of kids weren't graduating. So that was their reason to do it, and it worked. They started graduating. However, it's become a factory of just indoctrination. Nobody's actually learning. There's no real competition with the education system at all. Like I don't know about anywhere else, but at least in Miami, you see a bunch of schools like, oh, we're an A+ school, we're a B+, we're this, we're that. But those grades are measured by the test scores, the standardized test scores. And obviously, the better the grade, the more funding the school gets. The shittier the grade, the less funding it gets. And I know personally how that affects the education of the student because, for example, when we went to South Miami back in the day, we graduated 2014. Do the math. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. Do the math. So when we were in South Miami senior high, we were supposed to be a magnet school, but we were not getting the funding for a magnet school because at the time we were like a C- or a C or something like that. The school didn't actually improve until we graduated, and then the school became a B school, and that wasn't because of us because we weren't a very good class. It was the one after us. Our class was very problematic, a lot of fighting, and the classes before us also. So, it should be based off of the actual teaching of the teachers. And that's how the grading system should work. It shouldn't be based off of standardized tests because it doesn't prove that you've learned anything throughout the year at all. To me, the FCAT or whatever the hell is going on right now, the FCAT never proved that I knew whatever I was being taught that year. All it did was it pressured me to have to pass this exam. My anxiety just strike because I freak out during tests. I don't know how you guys are, but I'm not a good test taker. I genuinely get very anxious before an exam.
It didn't help that they literally the whole year they were
it was just pushing you
telling you about it, basically getting you intimidated.
Exactly.
Or if you fail this, you fail.
Exactly.
No matter what you did.
Exactly. You could have.
Who wouldn't be intimidated? Who wouldn't be scared?
You could have gotten straight A's throughout your entire
Yep.
and not did good on the FCAT and failed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it?
Those tests were a scam.
Yeah. No. I wonder who. I'm sure a lot of people make money off those.
100%.
But it shouldn't be like that. We have a family member who went to that same high school in the 90s, and FCAT didn't exist, and it was like how it is in college and universities. There was a midterm and there was a final, and if you passed the midterm and the final, you passed. And that's it. And that's how you should measure the intelligence of the actual teacher, of the school and the kids. Because if the overall average grade for midterms and finals for the kids is 80%, then that proves that the teachers are doing a good job and they're actually teaching. And then that's gonna, I would assume, help actually get them a higher pay, which is another problem. Teachers are a part of the teachers union, so if they do a shitty job, they're still gonna get paid, which I'm not okay with that. I think I read an article recently that Costco did this thing where they pretty much told their employees, oh, if you choose to not be a part of the union, we'll pay you more. And I'm like, dude, that's genius. Why the hell can teachers unions do that? I'm assuming that if the Department of Education is being dismantled, it's going to go back to the states, it would only make sense for there to be some type of competition. And they tell us, the teachers, yo, if you do this good of a job and you choose to get out of the union, we'll pay you more, So I think the unions are eventually going to crash because of this, because they were being, I'm trying to use the word, not surviving. What's that word? When somebody is kind of on their deathbed and they're being pretty much stayed alive by a machine. What is that called? I forgot what that's called. My voice. I have
no idea what you're
whatever.
Trying to.
It's in the tip of my tongue and I can't, whatever. Point is,
hanging in there.
yeah, like they're only alive because the Department of Education existed. That's why teachers unions were alive. If you bring it back to the states, eventually the unions are just gonna disappear, because capitalism is a beautiful thing, and they're gonna realize, wait a minute, we can make more money without the teachers unions. Why didn't we think of this earlier? So that's what I think. I can be wrong, again, just speculating, but I'm assuming that it could work if this actually happens the way we think it's going to happen. So speaking of the education system, Columbia University bends the knee to Donald Trump. That's going to make some drastic changes to the elite universities. Remember that the last 2 lives ago, I talked about how the Trump administration literally said that they're going to remove federal funding. I think it was like $400 million of federal funding from Columbia University and all universities. If they continue on this like pro-Palestine, Hamas sympathizer bullshit, they were going to get removed. They were going to get cut from the federal funding. And then Columbia University bent the knee and said, okay, you know what? We want our funding. We're going to do whatever you tell us to do. So check this clip out really quick.
Columbia University will in fact give in to demands from the Trump administration in order to restore hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding. It appears that in some way, shape, or form, Columbia has agreed to virtually all of the president's demand. That includes banning mask wearing, a new definition of anti-Semitism, reforms to the admissions process, and putting the Middle Eastern Studies Department under so-called academic receivership, all in response to last year's widespread protests at Columbia. Big encampments, demonstrators temporarily seizing a campus building, and those protests sparked complaints from some Jewish students that the school was not protecting them. Tensions have ratcheted back up in recent weeks as the Trump administration cracks down on the school, pulling funding and conducting immigration raids, including that of an activist who is currently fighting deportation from a facility in Louisiana.
Yeah, we know who that is. We talked about him last time. Mahmoud Khalid. All right, so really quick before I get into what's going on with the judicial system, I want to really quick go to Jose here. When the Social Security Act was passed in 1935, the average life expectancy was around 60 years, for white males and 65 years for white females. While the African American makes it males, it was 51.1 years and 55.5 years for African American females. They clearly weren't expecting us to live 300 years. Yeah, because apparently according to Social Security, we have vampires on Social Security. Crazy. And it's more of a daycare more than anything else. Yeah, the education system now is definitely a daycare. Life support. Yes, thank you. There you go. He was understanding me. Life supports. The Department of Education has the teachers union on life support. Thank you, Jose. I was like, bro, it's in the tip of my tongue, but I can't get it out. I appreciate you for helping me. So let's talk really quick about this. So checks and balances are under attack. The reason why I said that is because I really believe it is. So just to clue you in really quick, before we watch this video that I'm going to be cutting in and out because it is a long video, and the way they speak is very elite in a way. And, we're not elitist here. We're regular people. So we need to be able to relate to the regular person. So pretty much when, so Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, did a negotiation with the president of El Salvador, and nobody knew about this. This was top secret. We're still trying to figure out how this judge knew, but whatever, we'll get to that. And so they made a deal that all the Tren de Aragua guys, gangbangers, were going to get deported to the maximum security prisons there. You know how they're known for their prisons ever since that guy was in power. And then during the process of sending them there, this liberal judge, I believe he's from a district judge from DC, tried to block the Aliens Enemies Act that was legally allowing them to deport these guys to the maximum security prison. And now that's going to be under the court system. Now there's going to be an actual judicial review whether the judge was in the right to block this or whether they were in the wrong. I believe they were hardcore in the wrong, but we're going to find out as time goes by. But check this out really quick. This is Stephen Miller. I believe his name is Stephen Miller. He's a part of the administration and this propaganda machine from CNN.
From the beginning, right?
Yep.
Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, is here with me now. Stephen, thanks very much for being in the arena.
Glad to. Thank you.
So you called the judge's order just earlier today, quote, patently unlawful, end quote, and said that it was an assault on democracy itself.
It is.
Does that mean that the administration is ignoring this order, and might you ignore future court orders that meet the criteria you laid out?
The President of the United States and his administration reserve all rights under the Constitution to conduct national security operations in defense of the United States. The Alien Enemies Act, which was passed into law by the founding generation of this country, men like John Adams, was written explicitly to give the President the authority to repel an alien invasion of the United States. That is not something that a district court judge has any authority whatsoever to interfere with, to enjoin, to restrict, or to restrain any way. You can read the law yourself. There's not one clause in that law that makes it subject to judicial review, let alone district court review.
So, Stephen, when you say that this person has no authority at all, this is how our system works. It starts with these judges and then continues up. At what point does it become, in your view, legal for the justice system to be looking at this and making a judgment? And I fail to see how there's any other way but to start with where we're starting here before you get to eventually the Supreme Court.
Well, so first of all, there's a term in law, justiciable. This is not justiciable. In other words, this is not subject to judicial remedy. When the president is exercising his Article II powers to defend the country against an invasion or to repel a foreign terrorist that is unlawfully in the country, he's exercising his core Article II powers as commander-in-chief.
Is Venezuela invading the U.S.?
This is a very important point. This is a Title 50 authority. It's a commander-in-chief authority.
Pause it.
So just to ask you a simple question.
Do you see what she did there? So he's literally telling her what we're doing is legal. And then she literally goes and says, is Tren de Aragua invading your country? Like, are Venezuelans invading the country? You're like, dude, we had an invasion. What are you talking about? Like, you know what pissed me off about this? The fact that nobody was talking about the invasion when it was actually happening at all. They weren't talking about it, except Fox News and like the independent, podcasters on the right. But they were not talking about this at all. Where was this judge when a bunch of kids went fucking missing? Where was the judge? That's what gets me even more upset. It's like, bro, these people are full of shit. He's literally saying the Alien Enemies Act, which was created by Congress, by the way, literally allows a president to, under this act, if we're being invaded, to do pretty much actions that are going to stop like the invasion or to secure the country from the invasion. And there's other things to it, but he's using invasion as a justification to be able to deport these people out of here. And this bitch, instead of just listening to what the hell he said, but of course she can't do that because they don't know how to listen. All they do is deflect and then like ask a totally like random question. Like, what does that have to do with what the hell I'm even talking about? Because they don't want to accept the fact that what they're doing is actually legal, and it's going to look really bad on them for, instead of just realizing that this is legal, it's going to look bad on them because technically they're siding with the judge, and the judge is going to lose on the case. But continue on what he said, because the way he handles it is great.
You talk about how the system works. Does a district court judge have the right to direct or enjoin troop movements overseas? Yes or no?
No.
Well, Stephen, my question.
You see, she can't
You
answer
can
that.
answer my question first.
In other words,
is Venezuela invading our country in a way that would?
Well, all these countries invaded our
I'll
country.
answer yours, and you'll answer mine. Under the terms of the statute, Tren de Aragua is an alien enemy force that has come here as detailed at length in the proclamation at the direction of the Venezuelan government. The statute says that a president has the ability to repel an invasion or predatory incursion that is directed by a foreign
state
government.
or a government, right? Are they a state or a government?
This would be, yes, it is documented that TDA was sent by the Venezuelan government in the proclamation. And here's an even more important point. Under the Constitution, who makes that determination? A district court judge elected by no one, or the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy? The president and the president alone makes a decision of what triggers that determination.
So do you then
in the
think we
statute.
are actually at war with Venezuela, the nation state of Venezuela?
You're not hearing me, and you're not understanding
Yep.
me. Read the statute.
That's not her job.
Alien Enemies Act, 1798. It says if a predatory incursion is perpetrated by a foreign government. So it lists three qualifying actions. It could be an act of war.
It does say in the very beginning there has to be a declared war against a nation or a state. That's what it says.
No, wrong. Look at the statutes on my account on social media.
That's actually where we found it.
You're wrong.
Yes. It says, or a predatory incursion, or an invasion. The statute delineates three criteria for triggering the Alien Enemies Act. One is an act of war, which, by the way, an invasion is an act of war, but put that aside. One is an invasion, which this is. One is a predatory incursion, which this is. So it actually meets all three statutory criteria. But with respect to this particular statute, the proclamation is utilizing the incursion and invasion language in the statute.
So,
but this is a very important question, because no, hold on. It's a very important question. You said the way our system works is the President of the United States commands the armed forces of the country, commands the foreign policy of the country, and that's subject to district court review. That is fundamentally untrue.
I never said that, Stephen. I did not say.
That has never been true.
This was not a military operation. I mean,
a district court judge can.
So that is what she said, because she is siding with the judge by saying that, by him doing this, it's the right thing to do because it's checks and balances. Pretty much insinuating that Donald Trump doesn't have a right to do what he is doing when he does have a right to do it. Hence why he used an act that was made for this. Like, it was made for this. And she's like, no. This judge has a right to do what he's doing. That's what checks and balances is. And it's like, no, he doesn't, because the way that deal happened was top secret. And because this guy is trying to play president, he's now asking for top secret information, which he doesn't have authority to have. You're a judge, dude. Like, and what's hilarious? How the left and the Democrats are like, oh, but Elon Musk wasn't elected. Okay, neither was this guy. This judge is not elected. He was selected, not elected by the people. Who is he to do what he is doing? And what's even crazier is how, again, what's up at Lockdown? Thank you so much for showing up. What's crazy is that these are the same people who say, oh, let's pack the Supreme Court. Let's have as many people in the Supreme Court as possible. I just recently found out, y'all, we have over 200 progressive judges. I wouldn't mind if they were liberal. They're not liberal. They're progressive judges. And I've told you, and I'm going to tell you again, progressive is the camouflage for Marxist and socialist. That's what it is. But they don't call it that anymore because it's not marketable. They say progressive. We're progressive. No, you're a Marxist. But nonetheless, let's watch this. This is Chuck Schumer pretty much boasting about how they have progressive judges. Over 200 of them. I lost my mind when I saw this. I was like, what? And they want to pack the court? That's fucking crazy. That's insane.
The good news here is we did put 235 judges progressive judges, judges not under the control of Trump last year on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time. And we hope that the appellate courts, when it gets up there in the Supreme Court, will uphold those rulings.
Interesting. Lisa Booth joins us now. Hi, great to see you in person, Lisa. Long time.
I just wanted, because I couldn't find anybody else who was doing that except Fox News. Okay, so they selected all these progressive judges to pretty much stop Trump from actually doing the promises he said he was going to do throughout his campaign. This guy is one of the few presidents who actually is doing what he said he was going to do. We're used to politicians not doing that. We're used to politicians talking a big game and not doing shit when they're actually in power. And this guy has proven in 2 months that he is straight up serious about everything he said he wanted to do throughout his campaign. Like, he was not fucking around. And the fact that they're like, okay, well, we know he's not fucking around, that's why we're gonna get all these progressive judges in to stop him from doing it, which shows that they don't really care about this country or the American people, because the American people wanted this. The majority of people want this. They don't want an unsecure border, which, by the way, people actually believe last 4 years the border was not open. They actually believe that it was closed because the Biden administration did deport people, but at the same time they were also bringing a shit ton of people into the country. And there's one of those things that I've realized, that sometimes people are in such a bubble that they just refuse to accept what's actually going on. Like, I know for a fact the border was open because when you are a immigrant, you unfortunately know people who take advantage, when they can. All right. So as an immigrant, I'm telling you from personal experience, the border was open because family came the wrong way because the border was open. So the fact that there are Americans who don't want to accept this simply because they just either don't want to believe that perhaps, the president they voted for actually allowed a bunch of people to come in. And then there's the liberals who are humanitarians. They're like, oh, but, they deserve a better life and whatever. That's not a reason for political asylum. The majority of these people came here through political asylum. I know, unfortunately, people that came through political asylum, 2 years later, they went back to Cuba. That's not political asylum. You should not be allowed to go back to a country that you fled from because of political prosecution. Therefore, that means that a shit ton of people who are seeking political asylum are not actually being prosecuted in their country. They just want to come here for a better life, and that's okay, but don't lie and say that you are being prosecuted in your country. Just admit why you want to come here. I want to come here for a better life. So, and that's another reason why he's going to revoke a bunch of legal statuses, but we'll get to that. So, Elon Musk visits the Pentagon. So this broke out. People lost their shit about this, which again, doesn't make sense because the Democrats want cuts in the Pentagon. So they should want Elon Musk to visit the Pentagon and to talk to Pete Hegseth. But for some reason, this, I don't know, they made such a big deal about this. I'm still trying to figure out why, but let's take a look at this really quick. They did a good job at explaining this.
Elon Musk is a patriot. Elon Musk is an innovator. Elon Musk provides a lot of capabilities our government and our military rely on, and I'm grateful for that. We welcomed him today to the Pentagon to talk about DOGE, to talk about efficiencies, to talk about innovations. It was a great informal conversation. The rest of that reporting was fake. There was no war plans. There was no Chinese war plans. There was no secret plans. That's not what we were doing at the Pentagon.
You can read what it says
U.S.
there.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth met with Elon Musk, the head of the tech giant in the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, at the Pentagon to discuss ways to improve military innovation, efficiency, and production. After the meeting, Hegseth called Musk patriot and highlighted their shared goal of strengthening the U.S. military. He later shared on social media, "Amazing visit with Elon Musk at the Pentagon today. He is a patriot, and I look forward to continuing our work together. With Elon and Doge, we are ensuring our military continues to be the greatest fighting force the world has ever known." Musk's visit to the Pentagon sparked controversy after some U.S. media reports suggested he would receive a briefing on potential war strategies against China. However, these claims were dismissed by both U.S. President Donald Trump and Hegseth, with Trump calling the reports absurd and entirely untrue. China will not even be mentioned or discussed, Trump said, accusing the New York Times of fabricating the story.
You guys are denying this New York Times report that Elon Musk was going to be shown a 20 to 30 page presentation about a theoretical war plan against China. Why not just show it to Elon?
Because I don't want to show it to anybody. You know, you're talking about a potential war with China. Now, I deal with these people all the time, and I'm dealing with Pete. I'm dealing with these gentlemen on numerous different airplane purchases, and I think they're all going to be great. But I don't want other people seeing, anybody seeing potential war with China. We don't want to have a potential war with China, but I can tell you if we did, we're very well equipped to handle it. But I don't want to show that to anybody. But certainly you wouldn't show it to a businessman who is helping us so much. He's a great patriot. He's paying a big price for helping us cut costs, and he's doing a great job. He's finding tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. But I certainly wouldn't want, Elon has businesses in China, and he would be susceptible perhaps to that. But it was such a fake story. The New York Times is just as fake as CNN and MSDNC. And anybody read that story, people laughed at that story. Who would do such a thing? And the first thing I did is I called Susie and I called Pete. I said, is there any truth to that? And they said, it's ridiculous. No, he's over there to talk about costs. You might want to address that, Pete. But Elon was over there today to address costs. Doge, thing called Doge, which you've heard about. Pete?
That's exactly right, Mr. President. You pointed out it was a fake story. We pointed out it was meant to sort of undermine whatever relationship the Pentagon has with Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. Elon Musk is a patriot. Elon Musk is an innovator.
All right. So they created a false story that Elon Musk was supposed to know about, like pretty much classified information. And what I want to know is who gave that story to the New York Times to post. And what I also want to know is why are mainstream media platforms not digging into this to make sure this is a real story? Like, big news outlets ran with this. Like, CNN literally ran with this when it dropped as if this was like fact. I was like, dude, that's something like it's acceptable if I do it because I'm not a journalist. I'm not a media, like a huge media corporation. I'm just a chick on the internet talking about my political views. So that's more acceptable for me to do it, and I still wouldn't do it. So if I wouldn't do it and I want to make sure what I'm saying is like a real story, it definitely is not okay for them to do it. So that just shows that there's no real journalism anymore. Like, journalism in this country used to be like what we were known for. Like, that's literally what, the First Amendment is all about, aside from speaking your mind, is to actually have journalists that have the balls to go out there and report the truth, to expose corruption. That's what journalism has always been about. And it's become this propaganda machine, which, by the way, started during the Obama's administration. People really believe, I did a poll about this and I forgot to drop it, but I did a poll on my Instagram account maybe about 2 weeks ago, asking people if they believe Obama's when like the country got really liberal. And I believe it was like 70% or 65% said yes. And this is a great example. A lot of people don't know that the propaganda of the media, and that's left, right, the media apparatus itself, started this whole propaganda machine because Obama legalized it. Like, this wasn't a thing before Obama got into power. So there's so many things that Democrat leadership has, like, they've done that has really created, like, damages long term in this country. Like, I am fully convinced that these leaders that happen to be progressive leaders, the reason why they're making these choices, these really bad judgment calls, is because they don't really give a shit about the country long term. They don't want this country to be the greatest country in the world. They don't want this country to be the light, the light and shining, how do you say that quote? The shining light on the hill. Like, they don't want America to be known as an actual, freedom, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right to privacy, right to Second Amendment, right to the First Amendment. They don't want that. They want this country to be like China. The progressive movement is obsessed with, like, this China-like type of America where everything is censored. And, there's no such thing as free speech anymore because malinformation, misinformation, and disinformation, that's all like, that's what's going to regulate speech. And that's what they want. That's what these progressives want. That's what Bernie Sanders, that's what AOC, that's what all these, Kamala Harris, this freaking guy who's trying to be a centrist now, Governor of California, Newsom, all these people that are progressive are literally just communist Marxists. That is what they are, and they believe in a socialist program for this country. They don't believe in real capitalism. They don't believe in real freedom, and it's showing its tentacles. It's really showing its tentacles. And the reason why I'm getting really rattled up about this is because there's so many people that have fallen into this, bro. They've fallen into this trap of like, oh, we need to have free healthcare. No, we don't. You need to work for your healthcare. Okay? It should not be free. Nothing is fucking free, bro. Not even your life is free. You have to actually work for that. You have to work to stay alive. So if you have to work to stay alive, everything else should be the same. You have to work for it. Nothing is free. Nothing is given to you. Shit, even coming to this world, you have to bust your ass and compete with a bunch of other freaking sperms to be the sperm to get on the egg. So, like, just to fucking get even biological here, nothing is free. You have to work your ass for it. And the reason why I'm really doubling down on this is because of this stupid ass freaking Congresswoman, Jasmine Crockett. I can't stand this woman. She is just, I can't even, again, I don't even know why we have people like this in power. Like, we have the trans, and then we have the freaking Bernies, and then now we have the Jasmine Crockett. She's like the most ghettoest Congresswoman I've ever met in my life. But check this out. Trying to be Miss Hard over here.
New today, a direct message from Attorney General Pam Bondi to a sitting member of Congress for comments about Elon Musk. Let's take a listen.
Now you have this Congresswoman Crockett who is calling for attacks on Elon Musk on her birthday. Let's take him out on my birthday, she says. Yet she turns and says, oh, I'm not calling for violence. Well, she is an elected public official. And so she needs to tread very carefully because nothing will happen to Elon Musk. And we're going to fight to protect all of the Tesla owners throughout this country, and it's basic safety.
Joining me now is Texas Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, vice-ranking member on the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform and ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. Congresswoman, pardon me. It's always good to see you, my friend. And I'm going to say, I was looking at you on the monitor while you were listening to Pam Bondi. You seem to be not fazed at all. The Attorney General there, though, is telling you to tread carefully. I'm curious your response, and have some of these protests at Tesla dealerships gone too far?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to say that I participated in a Tesla takedown. That is the name of the website. And it was all about this large protest that they're calling for. And this is a nonviolent protest that they're calling for. And in fact, when I was on there, which is why the Attorney General had to say that I wasn't calling for violence, and it's ridiculous that I even have to say something like that. But because they are trying to twist our words, one of the things that I told people to do is make sure you are adhering to the laws in your area. Make sure you know what it looks like to protest and to be able to raise your voices and to exercise your constitutional right to free speech. And what we see is that they want to dull our free speech rights. They want to make sure that those that are participating in the press, because we saw that there have been recent attacks specifically on this news organization, they want y'all to kind of tamp down what you say and hopefully buy into the lies instead of going out there and just telling the truth. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see that Elon Musk, that his money as it relates to Tesla, well, Tesla's tanking right now, and I'm okay with that. So just in case the slow people listening decide to clip this up later, I just want to say that I have never promoted violence whatsoever, yet I've also never made excuse for those violent actors such as the ones on January 6th. So Pam Bondi, if you have an issue with terrorism, maybe you should talk to your boss about locking back up those guys that he let out that participated in January 6th.
That's all they have. That is all they have, dude. They have nothing else but January 6th. And you know what? Nobody was burning anything on January 6th. Okay? Tesla, okay, first of all, you can't even compare the amount of damage on January 6th to all these Tesla dealerships and Tesla owners being attacked by these leftist lunatics. And the fact that she doesn't even want to accept the fact that they are leftist, and the reason why they're doing the whole takedown is because they realize that, okay, that's not going to work because they're actually like committing crime and they're going to go after people. And what a coincidence, they're talking about this now. This dropped like, I think today, that video dropped, I believe today or yesterday, about how this takedown website is happening literally right after they just arrested somebody and they sentenced him for 20 years for damaging a Tesla, I believe it was one of the cars. It wasn't a dealer. But I'm assuming if you're those who finally get sentencing for the dealership damages, they're gonna be in there for a minute, because the amount of damages you cause is they're gonna do the math. They were like, well, you're gonna be in here for probably more than 20 years, buddy. Shouldn't have done what you did. But the fact that she's like, oh, I'm perfectly okay for them to like lose their money. You know, even though maybe you have constituents that are investing in Tesla, but she doesn't care. She doesn't care. It's not her, you know, it doesn't affect her, so she doesn't give a shit. Again, progressives don't care about Americans. All they care about is their ideology. She swears that what she's doing is the right thing to do, which again is anti-American, anti-capitalist, because you are seeking to want to take down a literal business, and you're affecting people's livelihoods who actually work in these dealerships because you don't agree with his perspective on politics. And the fact that she again used January 6th is hilarious when the left is literally doing all the damage. They're the most aggressive. When you look at their protests, it's always like this overwhelming violence. A bunch of people get hurt, a bunch of police officers get hurt, and there's a bunch of damage to private property, which is what Marxists love, because they don't like private property. So they don't like private property. They don't like cops. The whole defund the police, that's also a Marxist ideology. So yeah, these people, I want them to continue talking like this. I want you to continue talking like this. That way you can eventually incriminate yourself and you're going to end up behind bars. Which is, I know what you wanted for Donald Trump, but Donald Trump won, and you didn't have anything on Donald Trump to begin with. That's why out of the 4 cases, 3 were dismissed, and the one that was sentenced, by the time they sentenced him in New York, he was already a president, and they weren't going to do that unless they wanted civil war. And if you don't know how I feel about that, you should watch a video of me and Albanese, because he says that he should have gone to prison. And I said, by you wanting that, you're saying that you want civil war. So check that out. And then let's end this really quick with Trump. Last one. Trump ends legal status of 530,000 migrants, and then we're done. Went over my time today by a little bit because I was fed up, bro. Fed up. I usually do 5
I can say
stories.
this, we will do
But sixes.
large deportations from Springfield, Ohio. Large deportations. We're going to get these people out. We're bringing them back to Venezuela. You know, he told Biden he's not
This is during
accepting
his
anybody
campaign.
back. They moved all their criminals, not all of them, but the rest are moving in now. They emptied their jails in Venezuela, emptied their criminals, emptied the nests. They call them nests of bad people. They're all now in the United States, and they're now taking over cities. It's like an invasion from within. We're going to have the largest deportation in the history of our country, and we're going to start with Springfield and Aurora.
Do you want me to read that?
No, just continue. Don't pause because I want time crunch.
The Trump administration escalated its hardline immigration policies on March 21st. In fresh Trump's crackdown, Trump announced the revocation of legal status for over 530,000 immigrants. The move targeted Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans, ending Biden's humanitarian parole. Starting April 24th, these immigrants could face mass deportations as the Department of Homeland Security formalized the decision.
Okay, that's it. All right. So, Cubans, my people. You know, people would probably assume that I'm not okay, that I wouldn't be okay with this. However, this is a tricky one because they were given legal status to stay here, and he's revoking that legal status. So this is definitely going to go through the court system for sure. I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but I do think this is kind of like a threat. Like, you either self-deport or I will deport you. Take your pick. I think that's what this is. I don't think that they're actually going to be able to legally revoke the legal statuses. So I think this is maybe just a scare. Again, I don't know. This is just me speculating, but I think this is like a scare tactic to get people to actually self-deport out of here, and it's going to save us a lot of time and a lot of money. So that is all I got for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for supporting Married to